All right, as people are joining, I'm just going to get started with a few housekeeping remarks, and then we'll go into the webinar. So just to start off, my name is Claire Ladd, and I'm the Programs and Services Manager at the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, or MNN. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we dig in. The recording and the slides from today's program will be emailed to you following the webinar, so just please keep an eye on your email to get those. And if you have any technical difficulties today, you can reach out via the Zoom chat and I'll assist you. If you have questions for the presenter, please submit them via the chat or the Q&A function. We'll make sure to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. I also just want to give a little background about us here at MNN. Our three goals are to strengthen the nonprofit sector through advocacy, public awareness, and capacity building services. And we offer regular webinars in partnership with our affiliate members as part of our capacity building efforts. So please stay tuned for future topics and reach out to us if there's any webinar topics you'd particularly like to see. Our efforts are made possible by our more than 600 member organizations. To those of you who are members, thank you for your partnership. And if you have not yet joined the network, but would like to take advantage of all the opportunities and cost savings, please visit massnonprofitnet.org/join to find out more. All right, today's webinar is titled Month End Madness, Tackling Common Closing Challenges. The presenter is Nick Sampson, Client Accounting and Advisory Services Practice Lead at Baker Newman Noyes. I'll just hand it over to Nick to get started.
All right, thanks, Claire, and thanks everyone for joining today. I know everyone has a busy schedule, so I appreciate your time to kind of sit through this webinar. I hopefully can give you some time back on the back end of this. I don't think it'll take a full hour, but it'll take a probably good 45 minutes. As Claire mentioned, if you have any questions as we go through this, please let me know and we'll answer them as they come in. I still see a couple people joining now, so I'll give it one more second and then we can start. I think in summary, really, this will tackle everything that most things that should occur in a 10-day close at a high level, and hopefully you can walk away with one or two actionable items to help your team get through the close. So without further ado, I'll get started here. So Nick, why am I here, right? So I've been in the CPA realm working public accounting for a little over a decade now, in consulting, really providing everything from, day-to-day transactional management, all the way up to fractional CFO level advisory and really everything in between. And we do it and I've worked on everything from, pizza shops all the way up to, multi-hundred-million-dollar corporations. So pretty agnostic in that. So it allowed me to, really work with a lot of different companies and help them out at different facets of their life cycle. So BNN, we are a top 100 firm in the US. It's a pretty special year for us. We're celebrating our 30th year in business. I feel like any number that ends in a 0 or a 5 for any enterprise is a pretty good win. We're the fifth largest firm in New England with 5 offices spanning over Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, with a little over 300 people. We do everything from attest work to tax work, for-profit, nonprofit, and consulting. So a little bit quickly about my division that I lead up here at BNN, Client Accounting Advisory Services. I'm not sure if anyone on the call has heard of it before. It's actually the fastest growing segment of any CPA firm right now. And really, if I could summarize it in, one sentence, it would be helping with everything from transactional. So think about your AP, AR clerks, bookkeepers, all the way up to, fractional controller roles to fractional CFO level advisory, really any type of outsourced accounting department need. We can kind of help fill that role, whether it's a smaller enterprise all the way up to extremely large ones. We can kind of scale with you wherever you are in your company's life cycle. So enough about me and BNN. I want to get rolling here with the month-end close, and I don't know what webinar. I don't know if you're allowed to have a webinar right now without talking about AI, right? So I don't think I've ever sat in one recently that doesn't talk about it. And I thought a good way to kick this off would be to ask ChatGPT what it thinks a month-end close is. And to be fair, you ask these questions and it spits out an answer in about 30 seconds. And yeah, I think as I read through this, you'll kind of um, see that it does a pretty good job, but maybe some of the wording it uses is not exactly tied to what a nonprofit terminology. But it says a close is really the process of finalizing its financial records at the end of each month to ensure that all incomes, expenses, donations are accurately recorded. This process includes reviewing and reconciling accounts, verifying that restricted and unrestricted funds are properly categorized, and making necessary adjustments for accruals or deferred revenue. The aim is to prepare accurate financial statements, such as a statement of activities and the balance sheet, which reflect nonprofit financial health and performance. This process is essential to maintaining transparency, ensuring compliance with grant requirements, and providing stakeholders with reliable financial information. So, as I'm read through them, I'm sure some of that wording you picked up on, maybe you don't say balance sheet, right? You'd say statement of financial position. But some wording may change a little bit, but that's what ChatGPT thinks a close looks like for a nonprofit. So to get started here, I wanted to ask a couple of quick questions right off the bat to kind of form the cadence of how I speak on the next few slides. I'm not sure if we have larger enterprises, smaller, you know, enterprises. So hopefully, Claire, if you can pull up the polling here, we can get some answers on how your nonprofit accounting department is currently structured. And we'll leave this open for a minute to get some answers in.
Answers have slowed, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
Awesome. All right, so it looks like a little over half of us are a smaller team, but we do have some specific roles designed. Um, a third of us is really one person's kind of handling all the tasks. So that's great. So um, I think this presentation here will really speak to helping those two specifically try and manage your month-end close. So one more question, and then we can get to the polling. I mean, the presentation. Gonna pull that up, Claire. I think as Ellie knows, in smaller enterprises, volunteers play a key role in everything that we do. So you could just let me know. Oops, sorry. If you could just let me know, what the volunteers are doing to help.
I don't see any more answers coming in, so
Okay,
I will end it now.
thank you.
Share.
All right. So for a majority of us, it looks like the finance function is solely managed by staff. A great control to have. So glad to see that. All right, without further ado, let's get to our presentation. So, every entity has kind of unique challenges they need to address as they go through their close. And I was thinking about what's in the most simplest way, how can we structure this to report on everything? So I came up with these four processes. So we have prepare, process, review, and report. And we're going to go through all these in detail on the next few slides. But really, in a high level, the prepare phase focuses on gathering information, all the necessary information to ensure systems are ready for close activities. So really, let's make sure we have everything so that we can then proceed to the process phase. And that's going to involve more recording of all the information that we gathered in the preparation phase. And then once everything's accurately recorded, let's make sure we have another set of eyes on there to review everything, paying particularly attention to, donor restrictions, grant requirements, as well as making sure our functional expense allocations are meeting as they should. So once we have everything gathered, prepared, reviewed, then it's time to go to reporting. And really that kind of should go beyond really that basic financial statement, which will include, your program specific reports, grant compliance documentation, and really hopefully we can have some impact metrics that connect our financial data to our mission outcomes. I think that's the goal at the end of the day, to make sure that you know, what are we saying we want to do in our financial speaking to that. Um, and really this framework here, I think scalable. If you are, you know, $100,000 nonprofit or, you know, a $20 million nonprofit, really, if you follow those four buckets, um, you should be able to get through the close pretty efficiently. Um, in the timeline, we're going to walk through a typical 10-day close. This can be compressed, expanded based once again on the organization's size and complexity. Hopefully, we'll be able to define some clear roles for your staff. Looks like we don't have too many volunteers doing that, so we'll keep that out. But really, the board amendments throughout the process, acknowledging that once again, sometimes we're acting in a limited capacity here. So phase one, I try to assign days, right? So 1 to 2, 3 to 4, etc., for each phase and kind of when we think we should be able to complete these. Preparation, I think, was my most difficult one to put days on because really it doesn't need to be day 1 to 2. I wish I could put like -7 to 2 here. A lot of this you can start before, the following month. You should have some systems in place to um, appropriately gather all that information as the month goes on and not necessarily waiting to the end of the month to start gathering everything. But really, the preparation phase is going to lay that groundwork for, an efficient and effective close. Really should start beginning with verifying all the donation receipts have been properly recorded. That it's going to include things like the checks you received in the mail, online donations, any recurring gifts that should have processed during the month. Then we can move to reviewing grant. So grant calendar to identify any approaching reports, deadlines, and requirements that are there. This should allow you to prioritize the reconciliation of grant funded activities during the close. Then we have our program expense coding validation is a critical stage, obviously. Work with the program staff to ensure expenses have been submitted and properly coded. Sometimes expenses don't come in on time, right? You might have to make an accrual. So just knowing what type of expenses we're going to have as they go through. And what capacity are our volunteers helping us out with? Well, not all volunteer help is necessary for financial statements under accounting standards. It's important to track that stuff for, grant matches or demonstrating community engagement. And then finally, fundraising the events during the month, reconciling event income expenses, making sure, this sponsorships, ticket sales, auction proceeds, and pledges made during that event are properly accounted for. And really, if you think of this first step, it's kind of going to speak to how your close is going to go for the month. If you can really make sure you gather all the documentation, do it timely, have records procedures in place, that should really help out, phase 2, 3, 4 as you go through everything, because now you're not waiting on information. You can effectively close because you have, accurate information. So this really is, think about phase 1 as your foundation for your close. All right, so process. So this is, we'll call it days 3 to 5. We've completed our preparation phase at this point in time, right? And now it's time to really focus on recording, characterizing all that stuff in our financial statements. Once again, some of the stuff should be occurring as the month goes along, but this is more the validation of it, right? So we know critical aspects are going to be proper allocation of our restricted funds, review each contribution to confirm the donor's intent. That should go without saying, and ensuring that funds are properly designated for restricted, unrestricted in our accounting system somewhere. We'll have our program expense categorization. This is obviously equally as important. Every aspect here should be mapped not only for the correct general ledger account, but also the appropriate program, grant, functional expense category. And really, when you think about that, multi-dimensional coding enables us for both compliance reporting and also meaningful program analysis. I think one thing here is as you go through and really entering everything in, data input is extremely important because that provides the data output, right? So if we're not coding things correctly as we entering things in, it's going to one lead to errors, but two, it leads to skewed outcomes. So when you're looking at everything at the end of the month or end of the quarter or whatever your cadence is for everything, it's hard to accurately grasp everything because we're not doing a good job entering everything in. Um, and really, I think in this day and age, there's so many tools that are out there that we'll get to on later slides that can help us speed up that data entry so that our team can focus more on other aspects of the mission. But anyways, next we have reconciling our donation records between the donor management system and the accounting system. We know these are two different systems and they're going to contain overlapping information, but they kind of serve different purposes. And it's essential to make sure these are matching because if they're not matching, we know something's going to be wrong. Then we have our pledge receivables. So marking payments received, evaluating the collectability of the outstanding pledges. Do we think we're actually going to get them all? This will help maintain an accurate picture of those expected future cash flows, which are extremely important as new pledges come in. A lot of times donors are going to want to make sure if they commit money, it's not only their money that's going in somewhere. So if we can have that accurate picture, it helps, land new donations. Finally, and this one's hard, the in-kind donations received during the month, and this can be donated goods. So how do we value these? Donated goods, professional services. Are we receiving below market rent? What other facility discounts may we be receiving? So proper evaluation of those contributions really provide a more accurate picture for the organization's operations and support. And I think it really goes without saying, as we go through this process phase, maintain clear documentation for everything. I think no matter what phase you're in, phase 1, 2, 3, or 4, having clear documentation is very easy when you go back to look at something to know what's going on. We all live busy lives, right? So it's hard to remember what we did an hour ago, not alone a month ago when you look back, or a quarter or a year in review, knowing why we made some certain journal entry or allocation. So let's just make sure we have that clear audit trail that can be followed by others. All right. So we have gathered information. We have made sure it's in our system. Everything's entered in, and now we're going to our review phase. And based off the polling, it looks like we have dedicated people to maybe do a different facet of those first two phases, which is great. I always say if you are kind of the one-man show here, maybe you do phase 1, phase 2, give it a rest for a day so you can kind of unplug from it and then go back in to go to this phase, which is a review phase. And I say that because it's very easy to get in the weeds on things as you're going through doing that data entry, making things, having you kind of some tunnel vision right there. So if you take a step back, let that go, digest everything you just did, then jump into this review phase when you're all that one-man shop. That will allow you to better see inaccuracies that may have been made as you did those first two phases. But really, this verification phase is where we're going to want to ensure the accuracy and compliance of our financial records before we bring them to the board of directors or bring them to anyone that's going to want to make a sizable donation before they make that donation. So we can start really with verifying our fund balances, confirming that restricted contributions are properly tracked, and that spending from those restricted funds complies with the donor intentions. And I think we all know that's very important. Then we can move down and review those breakdowns between program and administrative expenses. As we all know, that ratio is extremely important and is watched heavily by donors. They want to make sure that their money is going to the intent of the mission and not necessarily overhead costs. So it's extremely important to verify that those expenses are properly categorized according to whatever allocation methodology that your enterprise has kind of come up with there. Um, from there, let's check out our grant funding activities again, perform the compliance check to ensure that all grant requirements are being met and that expenses charged to those grants fall within the allowable categories and budget lines. As you go through your month end close, I think it's extremely important to always be conscious of your budget and where we think we're going to land, because that's going to kind of help track, your future cash flows. And then maybe the board has some designated some funds for that need special attention, and they're not exactly like donor restricted funds, but they still represent something for internal commitments made by your board. So just confirming that we're following what the board wanted us to do and we're spending those funds appropriately. And then really in closing on this review, let's go through our functional expenses. Let's ensure those follow a consistent defensible methodology as well. That includes allocation of the shared costs like rent, utilities, staff time across the programs, fundraising, administrative categories. What else do we have? It throughout those verification phases, um, once again, documentation. I can't emphasize this enough to make sure you're always documenting why you're doing that process and why any adjustments are being made. That way, so when you go back, whether it's for some type of internal governance or if you have subject to an audit or review, you know why you made certain adjustments, certain allocations, and the methodology behind all of that. So now we've gathered information, we have entered all in, we've reviewed it, everything looks like it is in great shape at this point in time. All right, so we'll go to our phase 4, and this is really our final phase. And this is our reporting phase. And this should really transform that financial data to meaningful information for various stakeholders. So you're going to begin at baseline, right? Really with the financial statement preparation. So think about your statement of activities, statement of financial position, statement of cash flows, etc. And these statements should be clearly distinguished between, with or without donor restrictions. Then next, we should try and generate within our reporting package program-specific financial reports that show the revenue expenses for major activities. These reports help program managers understand their financial performance and kind of make some strategic decisions about the resource allocation. So where are we with this program, and are we going up against our budget in certain aspects? And do we have to revisit some of these costs that we're having or change, what the intent is of that? So, and then even more important here is our grants. So prepare, specific spending reports to track those expenses against the approved budgets once again. And having these and assessing these monthly and timely are very important to make sure we're on the right track. We should develop a financial dashboard. I know dashboards, one of those buzzwords, right? So are we using any softwares to get live information that we can see on a day-to-day basis? Did we build out that dashboard? Who has access to that dashboard? What type of key metrics are we showing on those dashboards? Whether it's, liquidity, program efficiency, progress, once again, against the budgets. I like, from my experience, board members typically uh, don't need to be so much in the weeds, but they like to have some context of the higher level and where everything stands. If they can have some live information as the month goes on from those dashboards, because you built it out for whatever information that really is driving our mission, I think that's pretty important. And really getting back to our mission, I think it's in closing here, connect your financial results to your mission impact by developing these metrics in this closed package. So let's translate a dollar spent into outcomes achieved, trying to tell some type of story of how these financial resources advance that mission as monthly, quarterly, yearly as we go on through our life cycle of our business. And the goal really here isn't just really from a compliance standpoint. Well, that is extremely important, right? We might have a review, we might have an audit, but it's really providing some actual insights to help our stakeholders make better decisions in support of that mission and helping, these prospects that are coming in to make donations, see that we have accurate, timely financials, and that this is very important to us. So knowing that as they provide us these donations, that they know their money is going to be spent effectively. And a lot of times, I'm sure you guys are all well aware, um, when you have a significant donor, he wants to know where his money is being spent. And if we can effectively close in these 10 days, which is a pretty quick turnaround, we can provide reports to donors that want them, and we can do it effectively, so they know that we're heavily monitoring their money, that better, you know, meet our mission needs. So, we have a software that we use that produces these month-end statements. I think, leveraging software is extremely important, especially in the nonprofit side where, um, we may not have full-time staff that are dedicated to this information, or we may have some budgetary constraints, and really using any type of software to streamline where necessary, I think plays an important role. And just really at a baseline in any monthly close package that we provide, we're going to have these six segments of that close. And this is going to speak a lot of, I would say a lot, if not most of our nonprofits use QuickBooks, and QuickBooks Online, I should say. And that ties directly into a lot of different softwares. And we spend time building out those dashboards, building out this financial package so that you can get them live. And the whole thing's like the statement of financial position, statement of activities, budgets, cash flows, specific donor and grant tracking, and then KPIs, which we like to specifically tie to the mission or whatever the board wants to see. Um, we also, with our software, it writes out how we performed every month. So a lot of times, the person who may be doing the close may not necessarily be an accountant, right? So what does that balance sheet mean? What do these ratios mean? It's kind of hard to decipher sometimes. So with all the AI that's out there now, that information can be easily translated in terms that can be digested. So I just want to make an emphasis on that it can help you do your projections. It can, help you read how did we do that month, and does this meet our goals that are XYZ? And I think equally as important as the close is our financial controls. So think about dual approval process expenditures, right? So what does that mean? Um, are you using a program like a bill.com to go through to have someone enter the bills? It will sync into QuickBooks, so you're alleviating data entry there. But what's extremely important is how many different approvers do we have on there? So the person entering it in, we have another level of approval on there, so it's just not someone entering stuff in and then letting it go kind of right out the door, because that's not really gonna um, that's not a good control, right? So we should really have some type of dual authentication for any expenditure. Maybe it has thresholds in there, so anything above $500 needs two people sign off on it. Um, but even at these smaller organizational levels, having this function in place for authorization for record keeping and really custody of our assets is something that's extremely important to make sure we're not spending money where it's not needed, or really someone maybe potentially taking money from us. Or so I would highly, highly, if you don't have something in place, say for that dual approval process, I would make If there's one takeaway from today is figure out how you can do that. And then really get into procedures here, establish something for monitoring our restricted funds to ensure that donor intentions are honored. What what software do we have in place there to do that? What procedures do we have in place there? Is it accurately written down? As a CPA firm, we and accountants, we love checklists, right? So for every client that we have an associate. We use a software called Carbon, and for every client, we have a checklist of every single step that we do to make sure that we are accurately following it every single month. Um, so that helps, you know, if you have, say, you have staff turnover or something along those lines, they can help and go through and, you know, hit the ground running. If you have someone who started in more of a staff level and they're trying to, make their way up through the different organizations. In this IAP, they want to go to AR, or they want to hold the whole, really run all the transactional management. Having those clear, defined roles and steps to be made are really going to help, you know, help streamline everything here. Um, and we know documentation's important for grant compliance. That's goes without saying. The evidence of those allowable costs, the required approvals, adhering to the grant terms. It makes the internal and external audits go a lot smoother as well as when you have these proper documentations. Um, and every nonprofit's a little different, right? So we got to develop our own methodology. Um, whether it's for your functional expenses, make sure it's consistently and emphasis on that consistently applied every month to reflect the use of those resources across programs, fundraisings, and administrative activities. So make sure you have your methodology clearly written out, and follow that until it needs to be adjusted for something, and then denote why it needs to be adjusted, just so you have something to follow. And I think really, if I could say finally here, implement a process for verifying donor intentions, especially large or unusual gifts. Maintain, once again, I've said this word a million times, documentation for any restrictions or preferences expressed by the donor to ensure their wishes are respected over time. If we have all these controls documented in some type of financial policy and procedure manual that's reviewed, annually at minimum, that should be our goal. Create those systems of those checks and balances that protects our organization and our money and our liquidity, right, for every step of the way as that finance function goes through. So this will be a fun slide. Technology stacks. As I've mentioned a million times, there's so much technology out there, and we all know, I think every day you hear about AI and what's out there in AI and how it's gonna, change everyone's life. So really using AI's, like, explore it. Go to ChatGPT, OpenAI, use some other ones like Cloud or something along those lines to give you your answers. Just yesterday, we got I had a client who's got a list of questions from a potential donor, and what we did was we took those questions, we went to like the About Me section on their website. We kind of highlight all that. We obviously take out all the different names, take out names while you're doing this, but we gave ChatGPT the questions. We gave them everything about the nonprofit, and we said, "Hey, ChatGPT, answer these questions using this information here." And those 10 or so questions that were asked, that would have taken, an hour or so to get through and, read and then reread and then adjust again, was answered in about 30 seconds. Of course, we took that information, we tweaked it a little bit, but it gets you, the hardest part is starting something, I feel like, and it gets you your answer, it gives you your starting point to then tweak to what you want. And it's a huge time saver, and especially in small enterprises here to leverage your time as best as possible. And to that point is I would say don't I wouldn't necessarily use AI as another Google. Use it so meaning like don't ask it like, hey, what's when do I need a review for a nonprofit in Massachusetts? They don't use AI as that, but say you have a contract, so you're entering into an event and this contract that's 30 pages. Upload the contract and say, hey, can you in 3 paragraphs, can you provide me the important facets of this contract? And it'll come back or read it, it'll digest it and let you know certain items. And that will give you your baseline as you're reading through the contract to, spend time on those areas. Use it in those ways. So it's enough I think about AI there, but also I want to get to some affordable accounting solutions. I think these are important. So what are we using in our technology stack? You have items like QuickBooks Nonprofit, you have Sage Intacct Nonprofit, and those offer, various price points and feature sets. The times of keeping any nonprofits financials in an Excel document that really there's affordable platforms that are out there to get away from that and really leverage these technologies to the best capability so we can spend our time on our mission and not necessarily on our data entry. Um, if we have donor management options, you guys probably know all these names like Donor Perfect, Bloomerang, and Donor Box. Those are some pretty good platforms. We have volunteer management options, which I think is important because the volunteers aren't in there every day. So this can help you manage all that with logistics, volunteer hub, Bloomerang again, and like Mobilize. That will help us, coordinate some of that stuff there. And some of these programs are affordable. And I go back to, where we want to spend our time. And if we want to spend our time more on a mission, then, the data entry of certain things, we need to utilize these and the good fact checking. So if we have donor management systems, okay, let's check that to our financials. Are they in line? And to be fair, a lot of these technology providers will offer discounted software for nonprofits. So as you're looking into programs, ask those questions. Um, and a lot of those programs are going to reduce your duplication of data entry because they'll speak to QuickBooks Online or Sage, and you type something in one area, it'll pop into the other. I know I say for us, for CAS, it's really half accounting, half technology. We leverage so much technology here to efficiently and effectively help our clients close their financials or go through that monthly cadence of transactional management. So design a process. I know we don't have many volunteers in a lot of the finance functions here, but keep them in mind. Creating, clear, well-documented procedures so that people can follow them. Um, you don't need to necessarily have that professional accounting background to go through and effectively enter everything in. You just need to really have that checklist and templates in order for someone to be able to follow. Before it goes out, before we get to that review phase, you're going to want someone with that background. But that transactional side, if you have policy procedures in place, technology to assist, um, and you leverage, those cloud-based kind of collaborational tools that are out there, um, that will help you facilitate sharing and approval processes. To help you facilitate, your program staff, your workers, and to really close effectively. But if there's one really, caveat here, it's remembering that this technology should really serve your mission, not complicate it, right? So don't get all these fancy tools. It's saying this is going to be great and really you don't use them or it's not meeting your needs. We don't want to necessarily um, waste our money. So figure out what solution will match your organizational size, right? Your complexity or whatever technical capabilities that you have within your organization today, or knowing what can we use today to then scale as we suspect that, our nonprofit's going to scale. So keep some wiggle room in there for, maybe XYZ software will help today and be really valuable, but we're going to outgrow that in probably a year. So why not move over to that other platform, invest that time now, and keep helping that go. What we're doing for time here. All right. Um, One last poll here. Claire, if you want to pop this up, and it's really about what part of that month-end process that we went through do you guys find most challenging? Are we, bogged down? And I'll speak to wherever, is the couple top highest ones here for answers. Like, are we having trouble gathering information, reconciling it, knowing what donor, or grant reports? How are we making sure those are accurate? We have our restricted, unrestricted, and maybe we're all set with all that, and then we get our financial statements, and then we don't know what to do. But let us know there, and Claire, let me know when we have some answers here.
Answers are coming in slowly, so give it a few more seconds.
Hope I didn't lull everyone to sleep. I'm gonna give it another 10 seconds, Claire, and then we can just close it.
Sounds good. Yeah. It's like we have a pretty big spread of answers coming in.
Perfect. So recording the transactions is 40% of the answer. Ensuring accurate donor and grant reporting, that's always a huge pain point. So let's focus on those two. The other ones are all spread 10% apiece. So recording transactions, at baseline, if you're not using the bank feed feature in QuickBooks, you're already costing yourself some time. And what do I mean by that? So in QuickBooks Online, there's a feature called bank feeds that you can go in, sync up all your bank accounts so that transactions get imported in. From there, it can start to memorize certain categorizations, and then you no longer kind of have to type them in. You still would have to tag them to specific, um, you know, what silo they relate to. But I think that at baseline is something that should be used. Also, as I mentioned earlier, like Bill.com or something along those lines. So they have an inbox that you can send all your invoices to. It'll come in, it uses AI to read them, recategorize everything the way it should be. You once again have to kind of choose what silo these are applicable to, but then it will speak to um, QuickBooks there to alleviate that data entry. What you want to do is you want to find a software that you think will fit your nonprofit best to get away from that first level, having to type stuff in, and you really want that first level to be a reviewer, not a data entry person. Um, Things are evolving here where that's going to become more and more true as things go on. There's certain softwares that, they'll build a bot for you and it will read everything and do the work for you. And maybe that initial, small investment pays off dividends in the end because now we have people less focused on AP and AR and these bots are doing our work for us. Um, so think about some of those items. I'm more than happy to help if there are any questions on, technology stacks and what we use internally here. For any scenarios, feel free. My contact information in here. Email me. I'll shoot you a quick email with, some of the options we use, and hopefully that can answer some of your data entry questions. And then, ensuring accurate and donor grant reporting. This is probably the largest pain point from a lot of our clients, between the donor grant reporting, the restricted and unrestricted funds, making sure everything is accurately in there. I'll go back to the data entry. If our data entry is not accurate, then this stuff here is not going to be accurate. And leveraging other softwares to be your checking point. So if we have, a donor and grant tracking software, is that speaking to our financials effectively? There are softwares out there that will speak, it's sometimes a lot easier to enter into uh, a software and have that software speak to QuickBooks than it is to enter something in QuickBooks and know how everything flows. So leverage some softwares to be able to do that. And I know I mentioned some of them earlier. Once again, happy to, talk offline here and let you know the softwares that we use internally. Um, some are dependent on your fee, which you are want to spend on them, which I mean by that, or the complexity of which those are coming in. So we have a couple more minutes here. Let me just go through some of these. So is I think this will speak to some common challenges here. Think about, we know our regulatory compliance, whether the state requires something or, the IRS. I've seen, some obscure things from the IRS looking into unrelated business income tax. And really what that means is, let's say we're an animal shelter, right? And we're selling pet supplies. Then, along with those pet supplies, we start selling flat screen TVs. Well, those TVs aren't really part of our mission and what we're a non-profit entity for. So the money that we made from selling those TVs can be taxable. I know that's a little extreme scenario. There's actually case law on that one, so that's why I brought it up. But think about, once again, our data entry and how all that lines up so we can figure out where our income streams are coming through. Um, Revenue recognition is hard, right? Especially if you're more, transactional nature than accounting in nature. Like, when do we recognize that revenue? Does this donation have strings attached that we can't necessarily recognize it yet because there's restrictions on it? Um, and with limited staffing, it might be hard to have those internal controls I spoke about earlier, with making sure checks aren't leaving the door you know, um, without dual authentication. And finally, if I could, I think this challenge here is something that can turn from a challenge to being like a pro versus a con, is technology. Some of it's free. AI is a huge time saver. Use leveraging the technology so you can focus on your mission versus your data entry and your financials there. And I also want to touch really quickly on some mass specific regulatory and compliance issues. I think, as we all, hopefully everyone knows, in November 24, Mass increased from 200,000 to 500,000 revenue threshold for reviews, and from 500 to a million on audits. I think that's great. Having a review on audit's not cheap, and when you're spending that type of money and you're only grossing, 200 or $500,000, that's a big cost. And to be fair, I think that money could be spent better elsewhere towards a mission, right? So, well, I think this is a step in the right direction. I would like to see it increased. Um, but I also see the value in this to make sure, that a nonprofit is acting the way it should. So it's a little double-edged sword there. And this one's proposed. I don't know if this is something that's going to go through, but this came out a little while ago, that on a personal return basis, income tax basis, that they may cap the donations on the Massachusetts return for $10,000 for married couples or 5,000 for individuals. So this is for year 26 budget. So just something to keep an eye on if that goes through. I don't know. I know it was heavily criticized when this did come out, how it's going to affect nonprofits and donations that may be made there. So hopefully they don't enact this, but something to keep on your watch. And finally, really in closing here, ultimately we know that our financial process exists to support our mission, not an end within themselves, right? So when implementing or improving your month-end close process, continuously connect financial practices to your mission. Always reevaluate that as you're going through, and help everyone understand how accurate, timely financial information really leads to a better decision and a greater mission fulfillment. Invest in training your staff, um, as well as your key volunteers, right? And emphasis on the people with even without, that financial background can learn a well-designed process, even if you're giving them the proper guidance and support. So cross-training opportunities, I think, are a huge thing to ensure continuity during, staff transitions and or absences. Really focusing on creating a simple, repeatable procedure that can consistently be followed month after month. Checklists, like I said, templates, clear documentation. I think I've said those three words a million times this whole process, this whole time. will reduce the confusion, streamline things, improve compliance, especially, in our organizations where we have those part-time finance staff or volunteers. And also, don't be afraid to celebrate financial transparency. Use those wins to build, trust with, stakeholders. And um, when you can provide those accurate financials um, in responses, board questions or donor inquiries, that just recognize this as a success of your close process, and that will help us, have donor commitment. And really, finally, kind of here to learn to tell your financial story effectively to different audiences. Financial data can become really powerful when translated into narratives about sustainability, efficiency, and impact. So help your leadership donors and community understand how that financial discipline amplifies your organization's ability to fulfill its mission. By implementing a structured mission focused on month-end process, I really think that you can achieve both, that financial excellence as well as greater impact. I just want to thank everyone again for their time today. Um, and I thought it was going to be a little bit shorter than this, so sorry. Not the full hour. I guess I can give you back a few minutes here. I'll take some questions now that came through as we were asking. But thanks again for your time. Like I mentioned, if you have any questions about any of the slides that are on here, I know Claire and MNN is going to make it available to you. We also will provide a QR code at the end of this that you can scan to keep up with any updates. But really, feel free to ask any questions here. Thank you for the comments about how clear and concrete this was. I appreciate that. I would say, yes, we can definitely share our contact information as well. I think, Claire, when you send this to everyone after, would you just mind putting my contact information in there
Yes,
so that
absolutely. I'll
the
definitely do
attendants
that.
can reach out? Um, so, any other of these? I know I have a bunch of questions coming now, and I know we're getting tight on time. So, any other questions that come in here, I'll be more than happy to reach out to you in an email and just send you an answer to your question. Um, I know some common questions that I have here. What happens as a month-end close comes in? We haven't received a lot of the invoices that we expected for, you know, various aspects. You can make accruals for those, and as those invoices come in the following month, kind of flip those accruals. So just pay attention to that. Also, what should we be providing to our donors on that monthly basis is another important one. Um, and having that report, building up that technology to have those reports once you're done with your close, spit something out that you can be deliverable to your donors. I think if you can turn that stuff around timely, I've seen great results from increased donor contributions and stuff like that happens. So, like I said, more than happy to answer any questions. My contact information, Claire can provide you in the follow-up email once this once this closes. And really, here's a QR code here. If you want to kind of learn more about BNN in our CAS practice, um, scan this, enter in your information, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions. But Claire, thanks again. Thanks again to the Mass Nonprofit Network for this platform. I hope this hour I hope I didn't allow anyone to sleep here. I hope you got some informative information. I always say if I can step away from a webinar or a seminar and take one or two actionable items to bring it back to, my team, that's a win. So I hopefully you guys can take one or two from this and bring it back to your team. So thanks again for your time today.
Yeah, and thank you, Nick, for the presentation today. And thanks to everybody who attended. Glad that you were here with us. And yes, just to reiterate, I will be sending out the slides and the recording once that's ready. And that'll include its contact information. We do have a question coming in from Gina, so we'll just answer that quickly before we
Yep.
end. She says, as a nonprofit coalition, our organization's work is largely administrative, so we do not distinguish between program and administrative expenses. Do you have any recommendations for organizations to start making a shift to breaking out administrative versus program expenses?
I think it's coming up with the appropriate methodology there, between what is, program, what we can feasibly define program versus administrative. And I'm happy, to talk more in depth about that, Claire. If you want to just give me a call, I'm more than happy to talk to you about some instances I've seen in the past and how we've helped clients differentiate those two. Any
Great. I'm not seeing any other
anything
questions
else?
coming in, but as you said, people can reach out to you
Yeah,
afterwards. So yeah, looks like we're almost at 12 o'clock anyway. So let's,
perfect. Right on time.
yes, yeah, thank you again. And hope everyone has a great rest of your day and rest of your week. Um, hopefully see you in another program soon.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Claire. Everyone have a good day. Enjoy your
Thank
afternoon.
you all.